Welcome to another show, the Beyond Sets and Reps podcast. I'm here with strength and conditioning coach Becca Grizzard. She has an amazing story. We're down here at the CSCCA conference in Fort Worth, Texas. And what I'm trying to do is pull together a list of highly accomplished coaches to share with you all. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Becca, Coach Grizzard. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. So I got into strength conditioning a little bit later. I majored in biology to become a veterinarian, went to veterinary school, had to move out of the country to get into vet school, which changed my life. But I decided that for multiple reasons, that wasn't going to be the path that I was going to take. So I ended up moving back to the U.S. and working in animal research at NIH in Bethesda, and worked with different aspects of animal research there. And I'm originally from the Atlanta area, so I moved back down to Atlanta, and I ended up working with monkeys in research. And I had gone to the gym, and a random person, I was having a conversation with someone, and they brought up a major exercise science that I didn't know it existed because it didn't exist at my college at the time. And it probably would have changed the trajectory of what I did if I had known. But so I started looking into, all right, so what do I need to do to go back to school? What is exercise science and everything? And back in the MySpace days, one of my college teammates had gotten a director of ops job at a D1 school. And I'd reached out and was like, how did you get that? And she's like, I just went on NCAA's Marketplace. And it's a little bit harder these days. But so I started going down the list, and I knew I lived in the weight room. I started lifting early, lived in the weight room in college. And I was like, I think that would be a good path for me. I enjoyed it, behind the scenes, making a difference in a different type of way. So I ended up just choosing to go to Georgia State. And they were an ACSM-based program, but I didn't really know any better at the time. So I'm in classes asking questions about, what about healthy populations? What about younger populations? And I realized I needed to get hands-on experience in strength conditioning. So I reached out to a few different places, but Emory University in Atlanta didn't at the time have exercise science. And so I reached out to that strength coach, and he was like, I would love to have a GA, but we don't have that program here. So I said, okay, well, what if I can get the program created, right? So I met with him. I met with with Georgia State, my people at Georgia State, and we worked towards getting a graduate assistantship created. So I would go to Georgia State, but then go over to Emory, which is a D3 school, which was great in my opinion. But I still remember, and me and him are really, really good friends. He was like, but I don't know you, so just because you get this created doesn't mean I'm hiring you. And I said, that's fair. And I said, he said, but I'm going to be hosting a couple of strength conditioning camps this summer. I said, okay, can I come work with you? And he's like, sure. So I went and I worked these camps with him for free. Obviously, that didn't matter to me. And then he gave me a contact of a local high school, a private high school that was looking for someone to help out. So I was going to school. I went over and I was working with the strength coach at Steve Lewis is his name, at Emory University. And then I went over and worked at a private high school, strength conditioning, all in the summer leading up to it. And so when it came time to make the decision of who he would have as his graduate assistantship, he chose me.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely a blueprint for success. Me being in the field for a few years, I would consider that a very old school approach. I don't know if younger professionals still see that path, or is that a path for them? Take us back to animal research.
Okay.
And why you chose animal research, because I want to see the connection between what you were trying to do and what you ended up doing.
So when I was 3, I was going to be a veterinarian. There was never a backup plan, right? And so There were two things that were going to happen. I was going to be a vet and I was going to play basketball in college. There was no other option. So I ended up going to Bethune-Cookman, at the time Bethune-Cookman College, now it's university, on a basketball scholarship to play basketball. And I majored in biology because that's what I needed, the prereqs to get into vet school. So I love animals, obviously a lot. And so in the summers, back then you had more free time in your summers than you kind of do now as a college athlete. I went and I worked at a veterinary. I stayed in Florida. I didn't go home. I went and I worked as a vet. Well, I started in the kennels cleaning and everything, and I worked my way up to being a vet tech, assisting in surgeries and everything. So I did that every summer I was in college. And then, so then when it came time to apply for vet school, it's harder to get into vet school than medical school because there's only like 20 something vet schools that exist in the US. So I got waitlisted at Tuskegee University. But I got in at Ross University in St. Kitts in the Caribbean. So I chose to go that path. And so, and it was life-changing for many reasons, just as far as culturally it changed my outlook on a lot of things, how we do things in the U.S. and other countries. So when I left and went back home, because suicide rates in veterinarians is pretty high, they don't make a lot of money, and money wasn't really what it was about, but I saw the writing on the wall that everything was becoming about charging people to take their animals to the vet, and that's not what I want. So I'm not sure I would have been a successful vet. So I made the choice to pivot and figure out something else. So when I moved back home, my grandparents had been in and out of the hospital. I was the one without the job, so I went and I was taking care of them, and I finally was like, I have to get a job. So but with my biology degree, I knew I wanted to do something with animals and still make a difference. And it's very controversial working in animals and research. I worked in necropsy, which is autopsies on animals up at NIH, cross-trained in bacteriology, cross-trained in health survey. But basically, it was researching, did the cancer medication kill the mouse, or did the cancer itself kill the mouse, right? So to me, it's a bigger picture, but that also changed in vet school because going out of the vet school out of the country, we got hands-on on actual animals, dissecting and doing everything. Whereas in the US, a lot of it's virtual until much later. First semester in vet school, we are in the animal, like dissecting nerves and muscles and all the things, right? So it changed my outlook on the bigger picture, that one animal can make a big difference. So, but I didn't like living in Maryland, which is funny because I ended up back there. But I didn't like living in Maryland, and I wanted to go back closer to Atlanta. And so I ended up working in autism research with monkeys. And that was a little bit of a different thing because I worked in it, but I was actually helping the PhD students with their research. And so I did like a lot of cognitive games with the monkeys and things like that. And then my last 6 months there, I raised 12 monkeys by hand with a special face mask so they could see my face because that was important to the research. And it wasn't a career, it was just a job, and I was looking for something more. I was looking for a career. So that's how then that random conversation about exercise science came up and ended up in grad school.
I can relate to that. My oldest daughter is a graduate student at University of Georgia, animal research, and she's working with pigs right now. Mm-hmm. So I get to hear all the stories about it. And I said, I didn't know if she was going to follow in my footsteps because she did have a passion for helping people, teaching people, even coaching, swimming, horseback riding. So I can see the connection between what you were doing and where you are at and what you're doing now. Understanding the biology behind it. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, what about that experience in the Caribbean that you use now? What was the difference in being over there, and how does it impact you today?
Yeah, it impacts me every day, and I do have moments where I'm like, stop. But when I got there, I I was very embarrassed by how Americans were treating people in the other country I lived in. I was like just mortified. Like, you are in someone else's country. You're not in the U.S. Like, everything closed at like 6 p.m. except for one gas station, or everything closed at lunch except for restaurants. And they complained and they were rude. And because of that, they were also rude to us because we were rude to them. So I ended up making a lot of local friends. I went to a lot of local parties or local get-togethers or things. And it was important for me to experience the culture, learn the culture, embrace the culture. That's something that I'm very passionate about. So it made me take a step back. And I had never left the country when I moved out of the country. I had never been anywhere, grew up very poor, didn't have that opportunity. And so when I go to other places, I try to experience the culture and be wary of it. That doesn't mean I'm always going to like the culture I'm in. However, sometimes I catch myself like, man, that's such an American problem. Like, something's closed. Like, when I grew up, Walmart was open 24 hours. They're not really open 24 hours anymore, right? And it's like, all right. So when it comes to my athletes, everybody comes from different backgrounds. Just like I said, I grew up very, very poor, right? And that's part of what drives me and why I am the way I am. But also, I've had international athletes, and they have such struggles, and that's actually what I study. I'm currently working on a PhD, and that's actually what I research is international student athletes. So it's impacted. I've made a connection. I try to make a connection with my athletes, but especially the international ones, because I've been there. I've lived out of the country. I was the person there, and I love it. I don't know. I just try to help them.
That is a very relevant topic right now with international athletes. I just had a conversation last week with some of the people that I work with, and we are looking at what we are currently doing for our international student athletes. Understanding that they come from different cultures, you have to understand what's happening on the world stage, how that might be impacting their experience. So with that, I know that you have also done some teaching.
Yes.
And looking at the difference between coaching athletes and teaching students, what are the aspects of that you think, if someone is a strength and conditioning coach, why would they be interested in teaching? Why would they want to take a look at that? Maybe they need to take a break and do some teaching. I personally, I'm a adjunct professor, so I do a little bit of teaching. What is the drive or the connection, or why should someone even take a look at that?
Right. So coaching is teaching. That's the way I look at it. Coaching is teaching. I never thought I would be good at teaching or I'd be interested, but when I was a strength coach at the Naval Academy for a long time, and part of my job was I had 6 teams of my own, plus I taught 8 PE classes a week. So I was very busy. The strength coaches that didn't teach PE classes, they had a lot more downtime because at the academy, everybody's training at the exact same time. And so, but I was always out. I was teaching weight training, rock climbing, kayaking, wrestling, martial arts. I was teaching all these different types of classes. And then that's when it kind of hit me like, okay, so teaching is coaching, coaching is teaching, but how do you go about it? So, and my goal is to help people grow, help people reach their potential, I guess, whether it's physically or in life. And actually, that's my approach as coaching, is I very much care about the athletes, like how's school going, how's your family, your brothers, sisters, parents, everything. They're more than just athletes. They've always been more than just athletes. So when COVID kind of came, I had already started considering going back to school just for another master's. And one of my professors from grad school from the sport management side had reached out and was like, have you considered a PhD? And I was like, no, I'm not doing a PhD, not happening. Well, ended up doing a PhD. So I'm at Texas A&M, currently still working on it. It's taken me a long time, but in that process, I said, I'm not teaching. But part of being a PhD student is I was teaching. And that kind of, I was like, you know what, I can still make a difference. I didn't make the same type of connections. One, I was a PhD student, so I'm working 20 hours a week, like a couple of classes. But I thought once I become a full-time, if I do this full-time, I'll be able to make better connections. So I still think I can impact them. I try to bring my experience, like my mistakes or things that I've done or things that I see you need to do to make it in the world, especially if I'm working in sport management, to work in sport, because it's a hard profession to get into. So, and it's just oversaturated with, everybody. We have over 300 students just in the sport management major at where I'm at currently. So, trying to get them to see, hey, these are the things you need to be doing now. Like yesterday, you needed to volunteer, go shadow, reach out to people. And so getting them for life, it's more about, there's a bigger picture than just the topic in the class. So, and that's kind of the way I approached coaching as well.
You've done a lot. You've done a lot. You have managed to squeeze in a lot of experiences in your career, in your life. Mm-hmm. Let's go back on something you said, creating a GA position.
Yes.
Like, I think about just being able to navigate that.
Yes.
Being able to understand who you need to talk to. You have to bridge two different universities together. It's hard enough to navigate one university. You're trying to create something that wasn't in existence.
That's correct.
That is not an easy process. And I think if you can share with us how you went about that, maybe others can see that it requires some imagination and creativity, the ability to develop relationships and follow through. So
yes.
Take us through that.
Yes. So the big thing, and I'm this is huge in all aspects, is you can't sit back and wait for something to come to you. You've got to be able to go after what you want and sometimes be creative to get there, right? So I knew that, number one, the exercise science program I was in was not a strength-based program, and I needed experience. So I was very, very blessed that my Georgia State was willing to try to help me navigate this. And I said, all right, I'm going to reach out to different colleges. And so I didn't know the strength coach at Emory at all. But I would set up meetings. I'm like, can I come by? There were definitely colleges that didn't respond, that weren't willing to meet or whatever. But, D3 for a strength coach, I think you learn, anybody that goes to D3, because there's less resources, you get a lot of experience in a lot of areas. But as a strength coach, a lot of times I think you learn to truly coach. You have usually some less athletic ones or people that have never lifted. And so and it's kind of fun because you get to start from scratch. There's not as many bad habits to break as the D1 athletes. But I got a lot of hands-on experience there. But I went to him and he was like, I would love help. It's just me. I'm the only strength coach. D3s come a long way. They have a lot of times have more than one, but it's just me. And I said, well, have you considered bringing someone? He's like, we don't have the money. I said, all right. Do y'all, have you ever considered maybe trying to partner with Georgia State? He's like, well, I don't know. Like, how would that look? I'm like, I don't know. So I go back to my university. I go back to Georgia State and I'm like, hey, they don't have an exercise science program, so they don't have anybody that they could pull to be a GA. This is my goal. I went to college. I went back to school. I wanted to be a collegiate strength conditioning coach, Division I, working with women's basketball. That was always my goal. And even though people are like, are you sure you're female? I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to become a Division I basketball strength coach working with women's basketball. That was always it. And so so I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but I got that person at Georgia State and Steve Lewis at Emory University in a conversation. And last I checked, it still exists, this assistantship. Last I checked, it still exists, but I'm not, wow. That's been a few years ago. But it just took me stepping out, trying to figure out a way. And I'm also very blessed because he still lifted, and I guess the senior or whatever. And he's like, hey, you need to go get USA weightlifting certified. So I went over and I got, club coach certified. And then he was like, you've got to go to these conferences because nobody's talked about networking. I didn't know, I wasn't in that world. And so he's like, you need to do these conferences. You need to try to network and everything. And so he really was huge in that process.
Wow. For it to still be in existence.
That's what I heard last. I haven't checked recently.
I mean, even for it to continue after you left for whatever period of time.
It was at least 10 years.
That's rare.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the impact and the influence you had, the relationships you helped to connect. Mm-hmm. Because most opportunities like that will go away once the person who created it leaves. Mm-hmm. Because so you did it with some sustainability, which is impressive. Which speaks to your drive. Mm-hmm. It speaks to probably the type of coach you are. So what type of coach are you? What would your athletes say? What is it like to be coached by Coach Grizzard?
Man, they love me, except for in that training time. They know I care. They know there's, especially conditioning. They don't like me during the conditioning, but they know I care and they know there's a bigger purpose. And I'm always on them, like, conditioning, this is more mental than anything, like, and they know I want to see them succeed. And they know I actually want you to fail in the weight room. That's part of it. Like, you are pushing yourself, but today you don't get it, but they know when they do, I'm just going to be just as excited as they are. Right. So, I keep in touch with a lot of them, and, they still say they miss me, of course, but, I joke with them. I'm happy. I know you might not believe I'm kind of relaxed until you aren't doing what you need to do. I'm very I'm trusting you. I'm going to give you the workout. I'm trusting that you're going to do the workout. Now, if you're not doing it and I catch you not doing it, and I give percentages and they're like, but I couldn't do it. I said, that's okay. You come talk to me. We figure it out. Don't just start, doing whatever. You're on your fifth set. You haven't even gotten to your lowest percentage. It's not an exact science, right? You have to communicate with me. So obviously she didn't come to me because she was apparently scared to tell me she couldn't get the percentage, but we worked through it, right? But they do know I care. And I think that's the first step in anything, is they have to know you actually care about them as people. Not just, you're just here to play a sport or just a commodity, because that's kind of, I think, where we're kind of headed, is that we're all commodities in sport. But I think they think that I'm a little crazy, but also that I care.
Well, I can tell something's there, because when I asked this question, your energy and body language went to a different level. So I think you know exactly what it is to be coached by you. For people out there that are trying to make their way, for the young female strength coach who's trying to make her way through, and they may not have had that mentor yet.
Right.
What advice do you give?
The internet did exist back in those days, but we are in a different place now, right? You have, as a matter of fact, recently, I haven't been a big Instagram person, but then I realized all the strength coaches that I'm friends with aren't really on Facebook anymore. I mean, the kids tell me Facebook's for old people. So, connecting, but LinkedIn, depending on the people that, especially in sport, maybe not strength coaches. Most of the strength coaches I tried to find on LinkedIn weren't there, but LinkedIn's is a huge one as well. But you've got to be willing to put yourself out there and make connections, and don't wait for people to come to you. I will say my first job, I was out of grad school. It took like 6 months. I moved back home with my mom, and it was a job in upstate New York, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and it's another D3 school, but they had D1 hockey, and I interviewed with them, and they said, well, we don't have money to bring people in, so we're going to talk about it. I called them the next day. I said, I'm going to be in the area. Can I come by? Right? Because I invested in myself, right? To me, did I really have the money to do that? No, but I flew up to, I don't even remember, maybe New Jersey, rented a car, drove up there. I'm like, I'm going to be there. They're like, okay. So I went by, I set up, I met with them, and I do think that made the difference. That's why I got the job, right? So you investing in yourself, being able to not wait for, and that's a big thing. Don't wait for everything to come to you. You've got to make things happen sometimes. And then as a female, I don't know. I've never really thought about it as a female because I'm just a strength coach. However, I think you have some advantages being a female, because depending on how you approach coaching, I think a lot of times females are able to connect differently with their athletes, and you kind of create a more, like, they were always in my office. Not that they don't come to the guys' offices. I'm not saying that, but definitely a lot of more coming to tell me about, oh, their brother or their sister's doing this, or they're graduating high school, they're doing this or whatever. And I was genuinely interested in that. So I think there's some advantages that come with it. I did not hit a ton of disadvantages. I was very blessed when it came to that. There's some. And if I'm going to be honest, you got to let a lot of stuff go as a female. You can't really bring stuff up and just you just got to let it go and not worry about it. That's maybe an old school approach, but that is what I experienced. You just don't say anything.
I have two more questions.
Okay.
Working with students and trying to help them to navigate what you have experienced in terms of it working and things working out, and the level of accountability and attention to detail and communication and discipline and hard work and follow through. What's the number one thing you think could make a difference with the younger people?
The number one thing. Just one. I think that I don't. That's hard because I do think that I will say this. In my current job, I'm in charge of a lot of interns. I'm in charge of their internship and everything, and I get the feedback from the site supervisors, and literally every single one, there has not been one that didn't come back with they need more initiative. There's a lot of other things that are going on, particularly with Gen Z and whatnot, but the lack of initiative is something that, and I really drive it in. And when in my pre-internship class, I'm like, this is the feedback I'm getting from these students here, the internships here. And then I've talked to multiple people, and they say, yeah, there's this not initiative in this it's not a blanket statement, but there's just not a lot of initiative. And so that's what I think. And I think that's what my career has been, is a lot of initiative on my behalf. And I think the internet is great because you get exposed to all these things, but that doesn't mean just because it's posted somewhere that you're going to get it. You still have to take initiative. So I think that's the number one thing.
All right. I love that. So if you're working with younger people, especially in college or high school, emphasize taking initiative. That's going to help to set them up to be successful in the future, currently in the now and in the future. I think what we'll do is save the next one for the next podcast, because I really want to dive in on your PhD. I want to know about your lit review. I want to know about the research, the methodology. I want to know about your findings and how everything is going with that. So is there anything you want to leave our listeners with that we didn't cover?
I mean, you covered a lot, and I talked a lot, so I don't know. No, I appreciate you letting me share. My story is very different than a lot of people's. I've done a lot of things in life, and I'm still in school, so I'm still learning and growing and, making pivots when I need to pivot. And, sometimes it's not always perfect. So be willing to change, be willing to move. I've moved a lot. And started over a lot. And it doesn't scare me, I guess. So I think just be willing to change things. If you want something and you're not happy or you think it can be better, make it better.
Awesome. Where can our followers find you?
Well, we already talked about Facebook's for old people. So I'm on Instagram. I think it's Becca Grizzard 24. I don't even know. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. Those are kind of the main two places.
I'll make sure that we send that information out whenever we release this podcast. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Have a great conference.
Thank you.